You know the name Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, but how much do you really know? That led Michael Jackson to be an asset. That made the Jackson Empire and the entertainment industry a whooping amount of wealth continuously. What if I were to tell you there is more? As Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 were more than just performers, especially a young Michael Jackson being the leader. His voice, his innocent, charming image. You can see that the focus was on keeping them out of Gary, Indiana, and keep driving Motown business to new heights. The rise. For you to understand the business of the king of pop, one must look past the stage lights and into the ledger of a vertically integrated family startup. The Jackson 5 era. This era was the architectural incubation of a global conglomerate, where the young Michael Jackson served as the primary asset in a model designed for maximum market share. The Motown bottleneck, between 1968 to 1971, inside the true Michael Jackson business. The Jackson 5 era, the operation began as a high-volume, service-for-hire model. On July 26, 1968, the group signed a contract with Motown Records in Detroit that solidified the Jackson 5 empire, but created a severe financial bottleneck. The contractual trap. The group was signed at a meager 2.7% royalty rate with a $12,500 first-year advance. Recoupable debt. Under Berry Gordy's corporation songwriting machinery, production costs were deducted from that 2.7% before the family saw a cent, effectively making them low-margin employees of a label that owned 100% of their masters. The Gary, Indiana launch pad. Despite the taking advantage of terms, Michael Jackson, without realizing, utilized this period to subsidize a cross-demographic fan base. By anchoring the group's unprecedented run of 4 consecutive Billboard #1 hits, I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, he converted Motown's manufacturing power into global brand equity. Diversification and brand equity. Between 1972 to 1974, how the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire was not just through record sales, but through the aggressive expansion of human capital. Realizing the recording contract was a loss leader, the operation pivoted to high-margin auxiliary revenue. Global licensing. In 1971, the group launched a Saturday morning cartoon on ABC, coupled with extensive merchandising, lunchboxes, posters, and apparel that grossed millions. Touring liquidity. Relentless global touring provided the cash flow necessary to offset the label's accounting. This taught the young Michael that the only path to dominance was the transition from a performer to a copyright mogul who controlled his own intellectual property and distribution channels. The strategic exit. 1975. Michael Jackson's asset strategy. How he architected the Jackson 5 for global leverage culminated in a masterclass of structural thinking during the 1975 move to Epic Records, CBS. The leverage play. The family sacrificed their most visible asset, the trademark name, the Jackson 5, leaving it with Motown in exchange for an exit and the right to write their own material. Whilst Jermaine Jackson stayed behind with his new father-in-law. Financial transformation. The move replaced the employee status with a revenue-sharing partnership. They secured a significantly higher 20% royalty rate and a reported $500,000 signing bonus. The outcome, by the time they landed in Los Angeles, Michael had successfully transitioned the family business from a subsidized Motown incubator into a self-contained, high-margin enterprise, setting the stage for the era of the solo superstar. So, with that said, what challenges do you believe they faced? The challenges. Friction in the machine between 1971 to 1975. While you and the world saw a bubblegum pop phenomenon, inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era revealed a tightening financial vice. By 1971, the group's service-for-hire model began to clash with the reality of global inflation and the diminishing returns of Motown's rigid infrastructure. The revenue stagnation between 1971 to 1973, how the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire was tested when the group faced a creative and financial ceiling. Despite grossing over $200 million in retail for Motown by 1972, the family remained tethered to the 1968 contract's 2.7% royalty. The Gary to LA drain. The transition from Gary, Indiana, to the high-tax environment of Los Angeles, Encino, increased overhead significantly. Joe Jackson had to manage a massive personal payroll and estate costs on advances that were essentially high-interest loans against future earnings. The Billboard recession, after their initial 4 #1 hits, singles like Sugar Daddy in 1971 and Little Bitty Pretty One in 1972, saw lower chart positions. Under Motown's accounting, lower sales meant slower recoupment of production costs, leaving the group with negligible liquid profit from record sales. The institutional bottleneck. Between 1973 to 1974, Michael Jackson's asset strategy, how he architected the Jackson 5 for global leverage, was because of obstruction by Berry Gordy's refusal to allow the brothers to write or produce their own material. Opportunity cost. Motown's internal songwriting team, the corporation, owned the publishing rights. By being barred from songwriting, the Jackson 5 were denied mechanical royalties and performance rights, PRO, income, the most lucrative long-tail assets in music finance. The Vegas pivot. In 1974, to solve the cash flow crisis, the business pivoted to a residency at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. While it generated immediate 6-figure weekly revenue to sustain the family, it was a brand dilution risk that threatened their status as cutting-edge global artists. The liquidation of the Motown asset in 1975 peaked, as the Jackson 5 discovered that while they were the face of the brand, they owned zero equity into the Jackson 5 name. The hostile exit. In a high-stakes negotiation at Motown's Hitsville West, the family demanded creative control. Gordy's countermove was a legal scorched earth policy. He retained the Jackson 5 trademark, effectively seizing the group's brand identity as collateral. The cost of freedom. To exit, the family had to walk away from their back catalog royalties and their name, a move that would have bankrupted a lesser operation. This challenge forced the final evolution of their strategy, moving to Epic Records, CBS, to reclaim their value through a 20% royalty rate and the right to build their own publishing empire. Which means with the challenges they overcame, what do you feel are the turning points that helped the empire of the Jacksons? The turning points. As you can tell by now, the journey has been nothing but amazing. Which means the challenges they faced gave them turning points that truly evolved the business of Michael Jackson and the Jackson Empire. The great decoupling between 1973 to 1975, the mid-70s marked the transition from a subsidized label experiment to a high-stakes corporate separation. Inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era, these were the specific pivots where the family moved from being a product of the system to the architects of their own conglomerate. The great decoupling between 1973 to 1975, the mid-70s marked the transition from a subsidized label experiment to a high-stakes corporate separation. Inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era, these were the specific pivots where the family moved from being a product of the system to the architects of their own conglomerate. The power shift. By attempting to bypass the corporation, Motown's internal writers, they were attempting to seize the publishing rights, the most lucrative long-tail asset in finance. Though Motown initially blocked the release of this music, the act of self-production was the internal point of no return for their business independence. The 1974 Vegas Liquidity event, often mistaken for a challenge, the April 1974 MGM Grand residency was actually a massive strategic pivot, a massive turning point. The cash flow revolution. While Motown controlled their record royalties, the 2.7% bottleneck, they could not control the live performance revenue. The residency generated 6-figure weekly payouts in liquid cash. The leverage. This Vegas hedge provided the family with the war chest needed to hire high-powered legal counsel to challenge Berry Gordy. It proved the Jackson brand was portable and didn't require the Motown machine to generate top-tier return on investment. The 1975 epic structural re-engineering. How the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire was ultimately decided in June 1975 with the move to Epic Records, CBS. This was not just a change of scenery, it was a total restructuring of their financial DNA. From employee to partner, they moved from a work-for-hire status to a revenue-sharing partnership. The result, The transition from a 2.7% to a 20% royalty rate was a 640% increase in profit per unit sold. By sacrificing the Jackson 5 trademark, Michael and his brothers traded a name for equity, securing the right to own their publishing via Peacock Music. This pivot transformed them from assets of a label into a self-owned holding company. And with each turning point, you can feel that they had to be very strategic. But what strategies did they put in place? The strategies. Because in order for you to become successful, you have to be strategic. So, with that said, by 1968, the Jackson family's primary asset was Joe Jackson's rigid management structure in Gary, Indiana. To transition from a local commodity to global leverage, the strategy shifted toward Motown Records. On July 26, 1968, the group signed a 7-year contract at Hitsville, USA in Detroit. The economic architecture was brutal. The group received a mere 2.7% royalty rate, which was split 5 ways and further diluted by recoupable costs. In 1969, Berry Gordy relocated the operation to Los Angeles to tap into the crossover market. The business model shifted to Bubblegum Soul, a vertical integration strategy designed to capture the white adolescent demographic. The launch was a financial masterstroke. I Want You Back, in 1969, sold 2 million copies within 6 weeks. By 1970, the Jackson 5 became the first act to debut with 4 consecutive #1 hits, generating an estimated $50 million in retail revenue for Motown in just 12 months. In 1971, the real business expanded into media diversification. Motown partnered with Rankin/Bass to launch the Jackson 5 Eve cartoon on ABC. While each episode cost $100,000 to produce, the show reached 15 million viewers weekly. This was a strategic force multiplier. By using voice actors, the live assets, the brothers could remain on the road touring while their animated likenesses maintained 24/7 brand dominance. This fueled a massive licensing ecosystem of lunchboxes and stickers. However, under the 1968 contract, Motown retained nearly all likeness royalties, leaving the family with negligible returns despite the global saturation. The era's endgame arrived in 1975. Recognizing that the Motown asset offered prestige but poor liquidity, paying them only 2 cents per record sold, the family executed a strategic exit. They moved to Epic/CBS Records for a $300,000 signing bonus and a royalty increase to 20%. While Motown sued for $20 million in breach of contract, eventually settling for $100,000 and the Jackson 5 trademark, the transition secured the group's financial sovereignty. This era proved that the Jackson 5 was a high-yield incubator for the world's most valuable music intellectual property. This proves that you can become successful and maintain your success even if you learn through trial and error. But here's the thing. You do not have to learn through trial and error like Michael Jackson so early on in his career. Here's why. As when you have deep insights, you learn how to quickly adapt and apply what you learn. So inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era is a masterclass in the cold-blooded transition from being a high-value commodity to a sovereign corporate entity. By 1968, Michael Jackson's asset strategy, how he architected the Jackson 5 for global leverage, was already in motion. By accepting a financial disadvantaged Motown contract, which offered a staggering 2.7% royalty rate and a modest $12,500 advance, the operation utilized Berry Gordy's corporation as a subsidized incubator. The psychological insight here is one of strategic patience. Michael and Joe Jackson traded immediate liquidity for global customer acquisition, effectively using Motown's multi-million-dollar infrastructure to build a cross-demographic fan base that was more liquid than cash. How the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire was further refined through the 1974 MGM Grand Residency in Las Vegas, a tactical Vegas hedge that generated 6-figure weekly payouts. This move was a pivot in power dynamics, providing the family with the cash flow needed to hire the legal muscle required to challenge their employee status. The ultimate decision-making triumph occurred during the 1975 defection to Epic Records, CBS. In a brutal trade-off of identity for equity, the the family sacrificed the Jackson 5 trademark, liquidating their past brand name to secure a 20% royalty future. By moving to CBS, they re-engineered their financial DNA, securing publishing rights through Peacock Music and transitioning from a low-margin service provider to a high-margin asset class. This era proves that true ambition is not found in the size of the signing bonus, but in the control of the distribution channels and the ownership of the intellectual property. Through this lens, the real empire wasn't built on records, but on the ruthless application of leverage and the strategic acquisition of mechanical royalties that would eventually fund Michael's transition into a global copyright mogul. So what have you learned so far? You learned that the business of Michael Jackson building the Jackson Empire during the Jackson 5 era is business, but yet also extremely emotional. As the irony of the 1968 to 1975 era lies in the high-stakes friction between the world's most vibrant pop icons and the cold, institutional silence of the ledger. There is a profound tension in seeing a child from Gary, Indiana, deliver a performance of I'll Be There that moves millions, while knowing that inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era, the family was struggling to liquidate a meager $12,500 advance. The emotional weight of this period is defined by a preternaturally mature Michael Jackson realizing that his talent was being utilized as a high-yield, low-cost utility for Motown's growth. It was a period of calculated triumph shadowed by the realization that under the 2.7% royalty corporation model, the more records they sold, the deeper they became entrenched in a system designed to deny them equity. The high tension during the 1974 MGM Grand Residency in Las Vegas. Here, the irony is palpable. The family is grossing six figures weekly, finally experiencing the liquidity of independence, yet they are psychologically tethered to a label in Detroit that refuses to acknowledge their creative autonomy. This friction between immediate financial survival and long-term vision is Michael Jackson's asset strategy, how he architected the Jackson 5 for global leverage. He wasn't just performing. He was observing the structural mechanics of his own imprisonment. The climax is a boardroom drama of tragic sacrifice. In June 1975, as the family defected to Epic Records, the triumph of a 20% royalty rate was stained by the heartbreak of losing their name brand identity. By surrendering the Jackson 5 trademark and witnessing the splintering of their own family as Jermaine stayed behind, Michael faced the brutal reality of the corporate separation. This moment of cold-blooded decision-making, choosing ownership over sentiment, is how the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire. The era ends not with a song, but with a silent, strategic exit from Motown, transforming a family of performers into a sovereign asset class, forever haunted by the cost of their own freedom. And, without this decision, they could have ended up like other groups who were on Motown. The fundamental lesson here is that you have to be able to use whatever emotions you are going through to push through to become a financial success and maintain. Michael Jackson may have been too young at the time, but he was soaking in the game. Even his brothers, which is why Jermaine was conflicted about loyalty towards his family or loyalty towards his father-in-law, who will help with his solo career as well. It's human nature to have so many thoughts and emotions. All this leads to one question. What do you believe the principle is? The principle. As you now know, the 1968 to 1975 era of the Jackson 5 represents a high-stakes friction between the world's most vibrant pop icons and the cold, institutional silence of the ledger. There is a profound tension in seeing a child from Gary, Indiana, deliver a performance of I'll Be There that moves millions, while knowing that inside the true Michael Jackson business, the Jackson 5 era, the family was struggling to liquidate a meager $12,500 advance from their initial Motown signing. The emotional weight of this period is defined by a preternaturally mature Michael Jackson realizing his talent was being utilized as a high-yield, low-cost utility for Motown's corporate growth. Under a restrictive 2.7% royalty model, the group was trapped in a corporation cycle where massive sales only deepened their entrenchment in a system designed to deny them equity. This tension peaked during their 1974 MGM Grand Residency in Las Vegas. The irony was palpable. The family was grossing six figures weekly, finally experiencing the liquidity of independence, yet they remained psychologically tethered to a label in Detroit that refused to grant them creative autonomy. This friction between immediate financial survival and long-term vision is Michael Jackson's asset strategy, how he architected the Jackson 5 for global leverage. He wasn't just performing. He was observing the structural mechanics of his own imprisonment. The climax was a boardroom drama of tragic sacrifice. In June 1975, as the family defected to Epic Records/CBS, the triumph of a 20% royalty rate and a $35,000 per side production allowance was stained by the heartbreak of losing their brand identity. By surrendering the Jackson 5 trademark to Berry Gordy and witnessing the splintering of their own family as Jermaine stayed behind, Michael faced the brutal reality of the corporate separation. This moment of cold-blooded decision-making, choosing ownership over sentiment, is how the real business of Michael Jackson built the Jackson 5 empire. The era ended not with a song, but with a silent, strategic exit, transforming a family of performers into a sovereign asset class. Michael was soaking in the game, learning that to avoid the fate of other Motown legends who died in debt, he had to master the human nature of conflict and trade loyalty for leverage. All this leads to the answer you've been looking for. It has been there this whole time. The real true principle is that the Jackson 5 era proves that talent without equity is a depreciating asset. In any high-level business, you must be willing to endure the corporate separation, sacrificing your current identity and emotional comfort, and secure the intellectual property that guarantees long-term sovereignty. This is one of the reasons why Michael Jackson asked, "Have you seen his childhood?" Because from the outside, he is just a boy genius, singing and performing with his brothers. But on the inside, he had no choice but to be the business his family's life depended on it. The next era of the Jacksons became even more pivotal. So,